All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
It is a pleasure to have you all with us today. We're excited, and we've got the full crew. We've got Albert.
Albert, thank you.
And Kim.
Kim, how are you?
And dealing with some audio issues off the top, which is kind of...
they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
They do. We work every day to try to get everything smooth, and what can I tell you? It doesn't always work out.
Have you ever been a member of the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, I mean, this may be the issue, you know. Never been a member. I may be commie curious. I don't know, is that...
Hey, Mark, it's George Santos here.
Maybe not. I might be right-wing curious. I can't decide, you know. Might be in for the big takeover, you know. It is a very big show today with David Katz to uncover the legal subtleties of what's happening with Donald Trump's cases. Also at the Supreme Court, obviously we addressed the lack of recusal that Clarence Thomas finds himself in, right? He's never going to recuse himself on stuff where he can protect his dear wife, Ginny. But also the likelihood of a SCOTUS ruling on these J6 cases. So we'll get to all of that today. Albert, why does this headset just keep falling out of my...
Uh-oh.
God.
Oh, no.
Albert, I tell you, it is...
They do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
It's just the equipment. Mark, your studio room is too dark. Let there be light. Oh, my God. Everybody up my A with something. It's unbelievable. Jim, I can't believe it.
Phantom of the Opera in there.
Does it look dark?
Well, you know, you got the dark curtains and the... You know.
Oh, my God. Jesus. And of all people, you should not be giving me a hard time. My God, Kim. Jeez, man. All right. So have you ever used Chinese audio equipment? Exactly. PT wants to know. Maybe that's the reason it's not working. Is this Chinese audio equipment?
You bought it on
I don't know.
Something like that.
I like the dark curtains. Thank you, Deirdre. You know, Deirdre's the only one I can count on.
She's the only one you can trust. That's
She is. She's the only one I can trust.
Yeah.
It's not dark. It goes with your goth motif, says K. Wayne 68. Exactly. When you're as white as I am, you want a super dark background. I like it. It's okay, says Ron. This is what I need. A little more Ron, a little more K. Wayne 68. Loop the wires of your earbuds over your ears, Mark, says Walter. So I've tried that, and it actually is hard to do, and it's a... I mean, I'll do it right here for you now. You have to loop it and then loop it back under like this, and they're not loopable. These are hard chords. If you're, but I like that everybody's playing in the game. It's terrific to have everybody involved. Yeah. We're here to hear the show, not judge. I thank you, Angela Silva. I need a little bit of Angela Silva in my life. Did you buy your equipment on Temu? Who said that?
That's pretty good.
Here it is. I'm sorry. I put the wrong one up there. Did you buy your equipment on Temu, says Sal and Cal. Yeah.
We got a good deal on it, everyone. Yep. It came at a good price.
I bought a kind of not gag gifts, but kind of cute cat shirts on Temu for Courtney, and it had the desired effect. It was really kind of cute. It was for her birthday. I mean, I got her other stuff too, but just that. I thought she'd get a kick out of that. Maybe I didn't get her other stuff. Come to think of it, I don't. Yeah, right. But anyway, the point is, it was cute. A little purchase on Temu, and what has happened ever since? I get more emails from Temu than any other sign up of anything that I've ever been involved with. Remember, Mark, you can dismiss 10 potential viewers. Yes, that's right. Thank you, Lee. Under the bylaws.
Good day, sir.
Yeah. Anybody gets out of line, I can. I have my peremptory challenges. We have a chunk of Trump today, as I mentioned, David Katz coming up. And I have something with David Katz that I wanted to share with you. And then I promise, those of you who are new, you're probably saying, is this what they always do? F around at the very beginning before they get, this, I promise you will wrap up the effing around.
There's never been anything like this.
I do have, first of all, I have one thing. I have high hopes that, okay. Shadow producer Calvin Wan is telling me about the headphones. You can still have a thin plastic headband and then enter the earbuds for jogging. Okay, thank you. I'll look into that. Appreciate that. David Katz, I always felt, should have some kind of intro. You know, he should have, we don't have a graphic for him. David Katz is our legal analysis guy, and he is used by media companies and outfits all around the world. So in London, you can hear him on London radio, see him on London TV, and in New York on major news outlets there, and Fox 5 in New York and beyond, also on Fox News Channel in San Francisco, both television and radio, and in Los Angeles, same story. So he's an esteemed guy. And I've always felt that, and this is most of all, he is the master of prediction. So we have a viewer, listener, made a Katzadamus caricature or likeness for David Katz. And we love that. And I always felt that Katzadamus, David Katz, should have some kind of special, tailored kind of music. I get it. I could play Year of the Cat, whatever. Great. That's terrific. First of all, I can't do that on YouTube because I'll be demonetized. But also it's like, okay, I get it. There are a bunch of cat songs, that I could play. But we actually have some intros here. And I'm wondering if I can play a few of them and then have the audience vote and then ask Katz which one he likes. So here they are, and I don't know how to describe them. This is kind of the Moody Blues rockish version.
Now behold Katzadamus, David Katz, the art of argument, his sharpest axe. Frameworks rise from his tongue, they spring. Interpreter of statutes, the legal king. Reason, praise.
So that's kind of, I don't know, you call that a Moody Blues, maybe.
Yeah.
Feels like Moody Blues, Donovan, kind of throwback sound. That's one. And we will have these in the poll for the live viewers to vote. Here is the second one. It's more R&B-ish, I guess you'd call it.
Welcome the man, Katz on the scene. He's breaking it down. Oh, Katz lay out. He's breaking it down. Raise the bar with no doubt.
Known for the legal feature in his drag.
Oh, yeah.
Law in his hands. He's got the plan. Prediction sharp. They never miss.
So that one I like more,
groovy,
right? It's just like it's upbeat. It's more me anyway. I like that stuff. I don't know about you, but I like that, kind of R&B-ish sound. And now here is the third, which is just another kind of version of that, but it's different. So give it a listen.
Greet the man Katz. Katz on the scene. Known for the future in his grasp. Oh yeah. Prediction sharp, they never miss. No way. He's breaking it down. Oh, Katz, lay it out. He's breaking it down. Raise the bar with no doubt.
And that's the third one. I don't know. What are we calling them, Albert? What's the third one called in the poll?
I have Moody Rock, R&B 1 and R&B 2 for the options.
Yeah, for me, it's... Randy, of course, always the bearer of good news, says none of them are any good. Yeah, there you go. Good job, Randy. Randy always is something positive. I remember was it yesterday or when was it? We were talking about the Electoral College. Electoral College, why are we wasting our time? That's the way it is. Just deal with it. If you can't win with the Electoral College, maybe you don't deserve to win. I love Randy, so smart. But he is really ready to pour water on whatever you've got planned. Yeah. I don't know. Women, they don't get the vote. Whatever. I mean, just deal with it. You don't get the vote. Just convince guys to vote for you. Yeah. I love it. Why change anything, ever? That's the way it is. Come on, just deal with it. When I was a kid, we had to deal with it. They're all horrible. Somebody else said they're all horrible. I think
they
they
want
were
a
horrible.
They want a Bee Gees vibe. Edward says they're all horrible. Give me a Bee Gees vibe.
A Bee Gees vibe. Oh, all right. Well, we'll try for that.
I like this. The second R&B is pretty. I like that one. That's pretty catchy.
I don't think that they're all horrible. What are they?
Welcome the man cat. Cats on the scene. He's breaking it down. Oh, cats lay out. He's breaking it down. Raise the bar with no doubt.
Known for the legal feature in his rag.
Oh, yeah.
Law in his hands, he's got the plan. Predictions sharp, they never miss.
Yeah, I like it. I like the second one. I don't know.
Yeah.
The funny thing about it is that we could have just easily made that just the intro and ran with it, but since we're giving everyone a choice, they're giving all their opinions. Like all of our other elements are great, like Chunk of Trump and Law and Disorder, and they kind of just live with it and no complaints about it. But it's now that we open up the floodgates, they have a lot of opinions on our intro.
Well, it's consistent. This is a talk radio audience, and they like to talk to the radio, but they're not on the radio anymore. So now we deal with their comments in the chat. Katz is a bad mofo. Yeah, I actually would have wanted a Superfly kind of thing. That's just sort of my bent. I just think finally somebody with a vote. A-Golf, right? A-Golf Twitler. Number 3 is as good as an intro. I don't know. Anyway, it's up. You can vote, and if you're not into it, you don't have to vote. I like number 2 or 3. I definitely am drawn to those. But we can. It's a work in progress. But anyway, I think he deserves something. So that's the latest on that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Your vote counts. So you can vote in the chat now. And then we'll get David's feedback at the top of the next hour. David is our big guest, right? We don't have another one, do I?
No.
Okay, good. Because I got a lot to get to today. I did want to mention one thing to Californians, and this is a note to many of you who are thinking of moving to California. First of all, for all of that stuff about how everybody's leaving California and it's, they're moving to Texas. They're moving anywhere else. It's so expensive here. I mean, and it is expensive here. The reality is that net, we're gaining people in California. And there is not a brain drain. It's not like all of the high-enders have left. Oh, everybody's going to Austin. Everybody from Silicon Valley is going to Austin. No, that's just not true. I mean, I get it. Taxes are lower in Florida. Taxes are lower in Texas. But it's also the fact that many of these high-enders, as I'll call them, the tech bros, they don't just move for lower taxes. They care about a lot of other things. And so when you look at the numbers in California, actually, net, they're not lower. But thousands of Bay Area residents are faced with State Farm now refusing to renew home insurance. Local residents have fewer home insurance options, with State Farm planning to stop renewing its policies in certain areas. I mean, this is a reality in California. That, I think, is a giant concern. I mean, gargantuan concern. We've talked about it before.
Because the only other option then, if no other companies sweep in to take over that business, is the state. And the state program, from what I understand, is really expensive and not very good.
Exactly. And the reality is they'll run out of money. I mean, if there was a big conflagration along the lines of what we've seen, the state funds would likely not be sufficient to reimburse everybody who is carrying the California plan, the FAIR plan, as it's called. So this is a real concern. It's a real concern if you're a real estate agent or if you're in the real estate game. There is a brutal reality about selling real estate in California. You have to have it insured. And that's why the state has stepped up, because private insurance companies have stepped away. Anyway, I thought that important. Yes, there is a lot going on. Kim is here to update us sort of minute to minute on what's happening, but I don't need to tell you that the former president is in the news. The current Congress is in the news as well as they vote on aid packages for Ukraine, for Israel, for Taiwan. Let's start with the former prez. This is a chunk of Trump.
Open wide.
Ready?
Here comes your chunk of Trump.
It's my favorite food.
With your first bite, here's Mark Thompson.
I have a feeling it's going to be beautiful.
Well, a second Trump juror is dismissed. They were kind of populating that jury pool very quickly, right? I mean, the jury box from the jury pool, maybe if you want to think of it that way, was being populated quite quickly. They had 7. Now they're down to 5. And the reason cited is that the one juror felt that they were not secure, that they feared for their safety because too many of their personal details were revealed by media. I mean, even just the physical descriptions along with what they do for a living. I mean, they essentially gave you a profile minus everything but the name. And so these people who feel quite exposed in what it will be a controversial trial in an increasingly divided nation, they just don't want to take the risk. I mean, there is a level of jury intimidation that has, and I would suggest that it's more than just jury intimidation. It's public service intimidation. Volunteers at polling places feel vulnerable. I mean, what we've done in this country is we've sort of weaponized this one-off terrorism so that people feel like, hey, anything's possible. I can look at what happened to those poll workers in Georgia. And great, so they got a $150 million judgment against Rudy Giuliani, but it doesn't help them now. And I mean, A, he can't pay it. B, they've had to move 5 times or whatever it is just to stay safe. They had threats on their lives. So back to the juror. The juror's saying, hey, I'm not down for this anymore. Now, the most recent one is associated with answers on the juror form that prosecutors felt suggested the juror was not being accurate in responding. One of the questions on the juror questionnaire asked if the potential juror, any of their family members, were accused of a crime. Under questioning earlier this week, juror 4 had said that he hadn't been convicted of a crime. Well, prosecutors found an article from the 1990s about a person with the same name as the juror who was arrested for tearing down political advertisements. The posters were on the political right. The man's wife may have been involved in a corruption inquiry as well and cooperated with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, which is prosecuting Trump's case. Judge Merchan noted that he had instructed the man to come to court this morning to answer questions and verify whether the people involved were him or his relative. He noted the juror's apparent reluctance to come in and asked if both sides would consent to having him removed without further inquiry. The Trump lawyer declined, saying that he wanted to first hear from the man. So, and the reason for that, I'd suggest, is because on the Trump side, they're just trying to drag out the game, I think, right? And it produces a little bit of delay. On the other hand, I'm sorry, go ahead, Kim.
No, I was going to say, and it shows also a political bias, right? So if this guy is busted for ripping down conservative or Republican campaign posters or what have you, then it will show, oh, see, and he made it onto the jury. So it's just another one of these things. They're tainting the jury. I can imagine, what Trump will say on the courthouse steps later on.
Well, right, but the reason I would suggest that that they're just trying to drag it out is that you're getting, the judge is saying you can dismiss this guy. You're getting the chance to dismiss them right away. Mm-hmm. So I don't understand why you wouldn't just take that chance. You're right. I mean, it's suggested there that there's a liberal bias or whatever it may be, an anti-Trump bias, et cetera. Certainly anti-right-wing bias. But the judge is saying, great, well, we'll get rid of him, And yet the Trump people are saying, no, let's bring him in. We want to talk to him. Anyway, we're down to 5. We're down to 5. The juror who withdrew was targeted by Fox's Jesse Waters. Waters said on his show, "I'm not so sure about juror number 2. Waters spoke directly about the juror during his show and questioned whether she could really be fair. The juror told Justice Juan Marchand that she had been contacted by friends and family asking if she was a juror. This speaks to how many details have been revealed about these jurors and how vulnerable they feel. And, you get Fox News will do anything to protect Trump, including revealing whatever information need be revealed about just that.
I mean, if I put myself in their shoes and look at all the horrible things that have happened to anyone that has to do with coming out against Trump, I wouldn't feel safe either.
On the trial off day, Trump complaining about the jury selection process for his criminal case. He doesn't like it. He doesn't like it at all, Kim.
There's never been anything like this.
He suggested that he should be entitled to unlimited strikes of potential jurors.
Why? Is he special? Is that why?
Because, not him, Kim, but because it's one of the worst venues in the country.
Oh.
Yeah.
Is it?
One of the worst.
That was very inappropriate.
Yeah. I mean, you got to give, he does everything right, and they end up in this.
I did everything right, and they indicted me.
Yeah. Now you end up in one of the worst venues in the country. The former president ripping the jury selection process for this historic trial. He did this yesterday on his day off. It could have been with Barron, playing whatever board game or video game Barron likes to play. Maybe Barron likes to run free in the yard. Melania, Donald, Barron, all singing, whatever they do with their spare time. It's like in Kim's house, it's a house filled with music and familial activities.
Yeah.
That's not the case here. He's got business to do. Posting about the hush money trial on its scheduled off day, Trump, who's repeatedly accused the judge in this case of being biased against him, suggested incorrectly that he should be entitled to unlimited strikes of potential jurors in his criminal case. I thought strikes, he said, were supposed to be unlimited. I was then told we only have 10. Not nearly enough. When we're purposely given the second worst venue in the country? He decried the criminal cases, decried is a ding word, as election interference, part of a witch hunt. Now, under New York law, each side does have an unlimited number of strikes for cause. But the judge presiding over the case, Juan Marchand, can decide whether or not that the cause is worthy of a strike. And you're allowed a limited number of those peremptory challenges. And again, the number is 10 for each side. If you had a higher level of felony, by the way, you would get 20. But it's only that level of felony. A Class A felony gets 20. But the level at which you're weighing in, Mr. President, former president, you only get 10. I'm a nurse. We can't judge. We take on an oath, the Nurse Practice Act. She was right to step out. Her very character was assumed by Fox and broadcast. It's juror tampering. Horrendous. Yeah. I think most certainly you can feel threatened, Did Auntie Stormy come to Barron's graduation? Very, very good question. Wow. People are not really Trump fans. Surprise. Seems like a rough crowd. You don't seem to like the former president that much, you guys. That was what he was doing on his day off. Now, one other thing that you'll probably hear about if you haven't actually heard about it yet, and I'm guessing this crowd has, is that in his remarks that he made outside the court, he said things that perhaps implicate him or suggest his culpability in this whole falsifying of records part of this case. Albert, do you have that video? Here we go.
I was paying a lawyer and marked it down as a legal expense, some accountant I didn't know. marked it down as a legal expense. That's exactly what it was. And you've been indicted over that?
So that was
incriminating?
Yeah, so that was an interesting statement. I don't think we should overstate how incriminating it was. I mean, his name, he signed some of the checks to Michael Cohen, reimbursing him for these fees. When he started to say, I marked it down as legal expenses, my ears perked up, because it's been a little bit unclear exactly how the state is going to prove that Trump falsified the records, because many of these entries may have been made by the accountants for the Trump organization. And Cohen is apparently going to testify that Trump was part of the scheme to falsify. It seemed there that Trump was saying that he marked it down as legal expenses, and then it seemed like he caught himself and said the accountants marked it down. So he may still argue that he was essentially relying on the advice of the accountants, or the accountants entirely on their own were marking it down as legal expense.
Yeah, there you go. So that's and this is very important, because I understand we've just come through a case where on the tax case, it's been a slam dunk. I mean, it was a layup, right? The judge looked at it and said, oh my God. I mean, this is like, it's like looking at the OJ crime scene. I mean, there's just evidence everywhere. But on this one, you need to draw the connection between falsifying records because you're trying to keep information away from the public. Again, there does seem to be a trail of breadcrumbs here, just, based on everything I've read and the legal analysis that we've heard here. And we'll hear more legal analysis in just a few minutes when David Katz joins, the former federal prosecutor. But what is interesting is that he really did almost step in it when he suggested, but again, he's not under oath, and he's just, there are a million ways you can step out of that.
Everything you say can be used against you in a court of law. They're probably going to re-rack that and roll it and play it for the jury.
Sure. I mean, they can play it, but again, it was on the courthouse steps, and he can always, say, oh, gee, I
misspoke.
Right.
Can you imagine his lawyer standing there going, oh, my God, he didn't.
Yeah. And there's a consistency of him saying incriminating things with zero consequences, says Quesadilla 79. It's so true. Yeah. Mike R. says, I would send Barron $20 for a graduation present, but I'm afraid his father would put it toward the legal debt. Wow. Really, I'm almost sure now, you guys really are not a Trump crowd. I'm really surprised by this. But anyway, that's your chunk of Trump.
That's it for this edition.
Well, I really enjoyed it.
But make sure to join us again next time.
I think you might want to listen. There's nothing wrong with listening.
For another chunk of Trump.
I have Kim's News coming. Smash the like button like the boss, if you would, please. It helps us if you'll just smash the thumbs up. Costs you nothing.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. Come on. My brothers and sisters. We'll have Kim's News, and then I have more going on in Washington, much going on in California, and I want to get to a law and disorder segment that includes a kidnap and murder plot on the part of a GOP official who was just arrested. That's right. I know.
What?
I know. All right. Stay seated. Kim's News, and then we get to all of that. And David Katz, the former federal prosecutor, the brilliant analyst, will unpack things for us in the 12 o'clock hour, the second hour of the show. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is Mark Thompson.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister, and this report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Here we go. As Mark mentioned, 2 of the seated 7 jurors in President Trump's hush money criminal trial are being removed from the panel. One was let go after being questioned about his arrest record. The other excused when she expressed concerns about her identity being made public by the media. The number of chosen jurors now down to 5 as Trump remains in the New York court and off the campaign trail, unless, of course, he's on the courthouse steps. President Biden got a pretty big endorsement this morning. Look at the Kennedy family, or many of them. He's receiving a major endorsement from more than a dozen members of the Kennedy family. The Kennedy family appearing alongside the president during a campaign event in Philadelphia today. Kerry Kennedy, the daughter of assassinated Senator and presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy, praised President Biden's accomplishments during his first term and criticized Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. The endorsement a snub to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s independent run for the White House. Democrats have expressed concerns that his candidacy would pull votes away from President Biden come November and help elect Trump in what is shaping up to be a pretty close race. Underway at Columbia University is New York police clearing out anti-Israel protesters. The students built tents on the campus lawn on Wednesday and refused to leave. So police in riot gear are clearing out the camp. They are arresting students for trespassing. The action comes after the president of the university faced a grilling by lawmakers yesterday on Capitol Hill regarding anti-Semitism on campus. So things are getting pretty ugly at Columbia. It looks like Republican Mike Johnson will need Democrats in order to pass his foreign aid package, just the way it's shaping up. The House Speaker plans for separate votes on aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, and then a separate bill for the border as well. The conservative flank of the party argues the border should be tied to Ukraine to force Democrats to vote for its passage. They warn they may oust him if he continues with his plan. Meanwhile, President Biden has come out in support of these bills and is asking everyone to vote for them. So this could be interesting to see what happens here. Officials are still investigating the cause of last year's fires in Maui that killed 101 people. A state attorney general report says a major windstorm toppled power lines in Lahaina, sparking the first fire on that day in August. The fire was extinguished but reignited by strong winds, and eventually there were 4 major wildfires that broke out. The official cause is being handled by the ATF, and again, the official cause not yet known. Black inmates sentenced to death by lethal injection suffer botched procedures at a higher rate than white prisoners. This is according to a new report from the anti-death penalty group called Reprieve. Black prisoners, they say, had a 220% greater chance of suffering a botched execution than white prisoners. As Mark mentioned earlier, we're in trouble here in California with homeowners insurance. 2 more companies now, leaving nearly 13,000 people without coverage. Tokyo Marine America Insurance and Trans-Pacific Insurance say they will be sending out non-renewal notices starting July 1st. Both plan to withdraw from the homeowners and personal insurance markets in the state of California. They didn't say why. Most other companies have cited the risk of wildfires here in this state. Representative Josh Harder demanding answers from the FDA regarding lead-tainted children's food being sold in grocery stores. Harder and his colleagues from the Congressional Dads Caucus are calling for a plan to ensure such food is never sold again. More than 500 children in 44 states have had high levels of lead in their blood due to lead-tainted food, including certain contaminated applesauce products and Lunchables served in schools. The man convicted of breaking into condos in the Lake Tahoe area and rubbing women's feet as they slept, remember him? He's headed to prison. 26-year-old Mark Anthony Gonzalez sentenced to 8 years in prison yesterday. Last summer, the resident of Atwater, California, broke into 2 condos in State Line, Nevada, through unlocked screen doors and rubbed the feet of 2 women before getting away. Gonzalez was convicted of 2 counts of residential burglary.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done?
Well, I'm sure he would like to apologize for what he's done.
Yes,
I don't know what apology. I guess though
it was wrong. It was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
Probably the best. You're right. That I don't think there is a my bad. I'm sorry. Ain't gonna get that done.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think that's gonna cut
What
it,
a weird
sir.
kink that you break into people's homes and rub the feet of women.
Yeah.
It just feels like there's more going on there, but I don't know.
Well, if you're a watcher of SVU, it starts with the foot rubbing and escalates from there. So this is probably baby steps into being a horrible criminal.
Oh, I didn't realize. Hey, don't watch SVU because I can't take. I don't like sex crimes. It really bothers me, and that's like almost exclusively sex crimes, isn't it?
It starts with the foot rubbing, and then
This is great that you're on top of that, so to speak.
Yeah.
Right.
I get my knowledge from television. Make way for banana slugs. It's not just UCSC anymore. It could be California's next state slug. The Assembly bill pushing for it passed this week with the UC Santa Cruz mascot showing support in person. Sammy the Banana Slug has been cheering on athletes for 38 years after students voted for it in 1986. So the bill now goes to the state Senate. It'll head to the governor's desk if it passes, and California has more than 40 state symbols like the grizzly bear, the golden poppy, and now we could have a state slug, the banana slug.
Wow, I love that.
Hey, everybody needs a banana slug. This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a place to get
right
a little
now, Kevin. I
heaven
can't drink
and
anything hot with my stitches in my mouth, but I've allowed it to cool, and I don't like normally cold coffee, but Coachella Valley coffee. Ooh, even
Did you
cool.
throw some ice cubes in there? Is it iced coffee?
No, I don't like ice. I just don't particularly like it. I know that leaves me out of step with most people.
Picky. I mean,
I'm quite particular, and this is a good. It's a good company, and it's a good coffee, and a great organization to order from if you are picky, because they have something for everyone, and their quality is top drawer. This is what you do. Really? Albert's showing you Mark T at checkout for 10% off.
And it's not, I mean, the quality is incredible, as you say. Great coffees, great teas. And on top of this, then they help businesses owned by women in these countries that are producing the coffee, correct?
That's exactly right. They fund, and if you want to think of them as startups, they support startups across Latin America and Africa run by women. Not exclusively, but now it might be almost exclusively, because he was telling me, I just find that if I give the money to women, they actually get it done. And if I give it to guys, it just doesn't go so well. I mean, that's been historically the case. So he really tries to concentrate on, and also these are male-dominated societies through Latin America and Africa, so it's great to give women a lift. So anyway, look, if it was just that, it would be fine, but I wouldn't say it's the best coffee I've ever tasted. I would just tell you about the women part. I can tell you about that part, and I can say this really is the best coffee I've ever tasted. And there are all kinds of beans, and they're hand-roasted. You've got to give them a try. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, but use our discount code for 10% off.
Can I just tell you that if you fired me tomorrow, or maybe later this afternoon, who knows, I would still order my Coachella Valley coffee tea, because I'm now addicted to it. I need to have it. It's so good. Sweet. So good. The firing or the tea?
I can't imagine firing. That's inconceivable that I could fire you. I can't imagine that. I mean, I guess if you didn't show up a lot of the time or something, then I would, go, hey, we got to figure out this clearly isn't, your thing anymore. But
how bad does it have to get?
I think, me, I can't fire anybody. I've told the 3 maid story before, about how I had 3 maids because I couldn't fire any of them. So I had one maid who was, I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again quickly.
We say housekeeper.
Oh, you don't say maid anymore?
No.
Oh, I see. Why? What's the reason for that?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, I wasn't aware of that.
My bad. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I had three housekeepers, and just to quickly tell the story, the first one was so old and I had these stairs when I first moved to this new place. There were stairs, and they were really it was a long stairway, not circular or anything, but you just look up, it's like, wow, and there were 2 bedrooms downstairs, and the laundry room was downstairs, but the primary suite, I guess they call it now, is upstairs. So you have to take the clothes down those stairs and then back up those stairs in a basket, right, if that's part of your gig. So I'm looking at this lovely woman who had to be 88 or 87 years old, and I thought there's just no way I'm going to make her walk those stairs and do anything. So the first thing I said was, don't worry about the laundry. Okay, welcome, don't worry about the laundry. Now, the other thing about this lady, and this is important because I'm a bleeding heart, is she was black. Because she's old and black, I'm racked by white guilt, and I feel like anything associated with this job is going to be, I just feel awful. You know what I mean? So I said, the first thing I said is, hey, here's what we're going to do. Don't worry about the laundry. Then I said, how much are they giving you from the agency? Because that's how I got her, through an agency. She said $25. She came from, on public transportation, downtown Los Angeles to where I lived, and she got only $25 after cleaning my house. I said, well, that's going to change. I said, I'm going to tell the agency that we don't need anyone anymore, that my wife's going to do it, or I'll make up some story.
Sure. And
I'm going to give you $100. Okay,
wow. Okay.
Yeah. So
good deal at the Thompson house.
Yeah. So that was great, except now I need somebody. And she walked so slowly. She was aged. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was sad. So I thought, no, I said, no problem. I don't want you to worry about this. That was my whole relationship with her. Is like, don't worry about the kitchen. Don't worry about the downstairs. Don't worry about this. I mean, just hang out, watch TV if you want to. I just feel so bad about everything that you've been through.
So then you need to hire someone to clean.
Right, which I did. Yeah. I hired a young woman. She was maybe 24. I got her through an agency, I think, or recommendation. And she was great. And she got everything done for about 3 weeks. And then she showed up one day with a little bambino, okay? A little child, little infant that she carried around the house and up those stairs and down those stairs I'm talking about. So up and down the stairs, she's carrying this little kid. And I'm thinking, this is just awful. I mean, I could have an accident here or whatever. Yeah. So I said to her, don't worry about going upstairs anymore. And I hired a third housekeeper. And she spoke Spanish, and I didn't speak a word of Spanish at the time, but she was terrific. And she used to come in on Sundays, and she'd do everything, and she was the real housekeeper. The other two were just on a social program that I set up for them. But you can see, I cannot fire anyone. So, Kim, have at it. Show up late.
I'll bring the kids in. It's
don't
good.
do a bunch of stuff. Right.
All right.
Will never. Yeah. I just don't have that move.
Nice. Yeah.
That's why when people say, oh, Mark, if somebody says I was an a-hole or I was this or I was that, you can just, probably not true, because I just can't, I don't have that move, I want to have that move, but I don't have it. So anyway, don't worry about getting fired.
I mean, I'm still here, Kim. If I'm still here and my thing is I set the bar low just to reach the bar every day.
Yeah, it's true.
It says a lot about Mark. So
Albert is he's the biggest slacker I've ever
Albert,
heard.
thank you.
Yeah, but I love him. It's just like a weird thing. I've got a mad love affair with Albert.
Wow.
No, like a family member. People used to say, you like Albert. When I was on the radio with Albert, they said, you like him because he's like your son. I thought, I never thought of it that way, But I think my son would behave better.
Ouch.
What?
Anyway,
he's very polite and well behaved. He's got a great sense of humor.
I love my Albert and I love my Kim. Nothing's going to happen.
Maybe a minor drinking problem, Kim.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I got from Mark.
All right. This is the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Good stuff.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
If you're just joining us, we are a show that started on the radio in San Francisco, actually, on a station called KGO, very big talk radio station. And then we moved here to YouTube. And this is where we have built a community of followers and supporters, many of whom jump on our Patreon and PayPal to keep us on the air since we are crowdfunded. We don't really have advertisements like we did when we were on the radio. And so now it's all about you, the audience. So thanks for jumping on our Patreon or PayPal and those communities and joining that world of people that does keep us going. And you can find Patreon and PayPal links under every video. I'd like to do it before the legal ninja gets here, David Katz. Let's do some law and disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law. You're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
I kind of like the heist story, and that's what I'm going to go with first. 6 people finally arrested in what was a multi-million-dollar gold heist. It happened at Toronto's Pearson International Airport, and it's been a year, and they haven't been able to find anybody. But now it's different. They have arrested 6 people, as I say, and they have issued arrest warrants for 3 others. It was an inside job, you know. Yeah, I mean, come on, it had to be.
It seemed like the perfect crime, the perfect caper.
An air cargo container carrying more than 22 million Canadian dollars worth of gold, also foreign currency, gold bars is what it was. It was stolen from a secure storage facility using fake paperwork. The gold bars and currency had just arrived on an Air Canada flight from Zurich, Switzerland. At least 2 former Air Canada employees allegedly helped in this audacious theft. One is now in custody, and an arrest warrant has been issued for the other.
Gotcha.
They needed people inside Air Canada to make this happen, said the cops. It was an inside job. We have people on the inside who can make this work. And we will walk away with $22 million.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
2 of the individuals identified did work for Air Canada in the cargo division at the time of the incident. 1 left the company prior to the arrests. The second has been suspended.
Suspended?
We're out $22 million. Get in here. You're suspended for the rest of the day.
I wonder how much they paid the workers to cooperate with this whole thing. Like, you know, how much to put your job at risk?
The investigation was dubbed Project 24 Carat. Involved the U.S. Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, etc. And a guy who was arrested, interestingly enough, on traffic violations in Pennsylvania was the driver of the truck that stole the cargo container. The man was in the U.S. illegally, fled on foot during this traffic stop, and then the state trooper found firearms in his rental car. A court-authorized search warrant for the vehicle led to the recovery of the firearms, and they were apparently destined to be smuggled into Canada. So there's a lot more going on here than just the heist, and this guy was apparently involved in this gun running.
Did they recover any of the gold?
We believe that they melted down the gold, said the cops, and the profits they got from the gold, they used to help finance the firearms. And it was a firearms operation going to Canada.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Funny about that. You guys didn't think that just hanging onto the gold was enough? You had to melt the gold down so that you could then buy firearms? It just seems like that there's an extra step in there. I don't know. I'm just an amateur criminal, just kind of looking from the outside in. Kim watches SVU, and between us, we try to handicap what might happen, but it seems to me like you've got an extra step in there. That's all I'm saying.
People are never satisfied. They had $24 million.
Yeah.
Let's melt it down and make even more money. All right.
The answer to your question, though, Kim, because you did ask, did they get the stuff back? They've recovered only a fraction of the gold bars and cash. So they have executed search warrants, and maybe they'll turn up more. But so far, no, it hasn't happened. In Oklahoma.
Did they check all the coat pockets? Are they sure? Okay.
Checked Senator Menendez's house?
Exactly.
Oklahoma County GOP chair is arrested. It's an alleged murder kidnap plot. Tiffany Adams. Last year, she was elected chairwoman of Cimarron County's Republican Party. She was arrested this week, charged with 3 other people of participating in kidnapping and murder.
Oh.
Albert, I don't know if you can rally this pick. I have it in the rundown, but I think her booking photo. I will.
Pretty good.
Well, it's just there. It is. She's arrested in Texas. I guess arrested in Texas County anyway. The Mark Thompson Show booking photo scale. I'll leave it to you in the chat to tell me. I don't think it's going to be very high, though.
It's between a 3 and a 4, really.
Oh, that's higher than okay.
I mean,
all
it
right.
is amusing. The look on her face is amusing. She's in connection with kidnapping and murder.
That photo is a 4. Yes, I know it's incredible. It happens in the best of families, Kim. According to news reports, she was involved in a custody dispute with Veronica Butler, who's 27 years old, and 39-year-old Jillian Kelly. They both disappeared a little over 2 weeks ago. And she was participating. She was in this custody dispute with 54-year-old Tiffany Adams. I'm sorry. So she's Tiffany Adams.
Okay.
The dispute was between the 27-year-old Veronica Butler and Tiffany Adams, okay? But there is another person involved, Jillian Kelly, 39-year-old, who disappeared with the 27-year-olds. You got a 27-year-old and a 39-year-old missing. The 27-year-old is in this custody dispute with Butler.
How old's Tiffany? Because she doesn't look like she's young enough to be in a custody dispute.
No, Tiffany Adams is the grandmother, and
yes,
that's
okay.
why she wanted custody. Yes, thank you for pointing that out. So she's the paternal grandmother of Butler's children, okay? So Butler and Kelly have been traveling to the house to pick up the kids for a court-ordered visitation before they mysteriously vanished, the younger women. The 2 women's bodies were discovered on April 14th, and then Adams was arrested shortly afterward, along with fellow suspects Tad Cullum, Cole Twombly, and Cora Twombly. Each of the 4 being charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, 2 counts of kidnapping, 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. Tragic situation.
So now the kids have no one.
Exactly. Exactly. And just weird that she had her act together enough to win that Oklahoma County GOP chair seat. I'm just saying. Meanwhile, closer to home, if you live in the Bay Area, one of the big stories, if you didn't live in the Bay Area, it's actually a wild story, and Kim probably knows even more about it and can fill in some details. There was an auction for these condos in San Jose. Now remember, San Jose, you get a condo, it's going to cost you a lot of money. But they turned these condos over into an auction, and people got these condos for as low as $36,000, right?
Which is unheard of in Silicon Valley. It was a foreclosure auction. And so that's the problem. So the winning bid's up to $32,300. That's crazy.
I mean, so you were living in downtown San Jose in a condo for $36,000. I mean, that's what your property tax probably is, you know?
It's true. It's true.
So
go ahead.
Go ahead. What happened?
You.
No. Since then, there have been questions. I mean, after the celebration has ended, there is, and this is the reason it's in Law and Disorder, a lawsuit. And they are suing the winning bidders in that auction. They are also suing the trustee that conducted the proceeding. And this at least puts a big question mark over whether or not people are actually going to take control of these condos.
And lest you think that these are, kind of scuzzy condos in a bad area, no, they're really not. They're right across from San Pedro Square, which is this place where they've closed down the streets, and it's this hip, up and coming, lots of restaurants, lots of activity. They're each 2 bedrooms, 1,200 square foot units. Again, right across from San Pedro Square, where there's foods, drink, nightlife, all kinds of things. Beautiful views of San Jose and the Bay Area. And other units in this complex have sold for more than $500,000. And here we have $32,000 for these. Crazy.
Yes. And apparently they're accusing this is not what the entire suit is about, but they're accusing the buyers of having colluded in the auction so that they essentially manipulated these prices to keep them low. I don't know, but I don't think that's the last word, because it's like, so what? I mean, but this is not a done deal.
No, there's now legal maneuvers going on. So 9 of the condos were sold to 5 buyers who paid between $31,000 and $32,000 per unit. There was apparently a reporter in attendance because they knew that this auction was going to happen. And the reporter says they saw the bidders striking up unofficial deals with each other to avoid bidding wars on these individual units. Yeah. So one buyer bought 3 condos, 2 other buyers each bought 2 condos, 2 other people each bought 1. And I guess it didn't go very smoothly. There were court-issued restraining orders, temporarily delaying foreclosure proceedings, all of this. So this is going to be a huge legal battle now.
Well, the last thing I'll say is the reason that the condos came up and so that there was even an auction to begin with is because there was they were overdue, the developers were, on payments they need to make, and they have late fees and penalties for each condo, and so you have these big numbers, and essentially because of their delinquency, the condos were taken over and they were auctioned. Now the developer is trying to regain ownership. They have 90 days actually to regain ownership. They can take the condos away from those people who had it. But anyway, that's what's going on in San Jose. It was a big story at the time because, like, wow, you get these condos in San Jose for I think the average price when you average them all out, the 9 condos, was $31,900. A former HGTV star gets jail time for a Bay Area house flipping fraud. Charles Todd Hill, 58, of Los Gatos, appeared as one of the featured flippers on the show Flip It to Win It. The show's concept was that he bought dilapidated homes, fixed them up, and then, of course, sold them for a profit.
I used to watch that show.
No.
I recognize the guy, yeah.
You won't see Todd Hill on it anymore. He is no longer flipping. He is, well, he may want to flip with information, but he's not going to be flipping to resell. But Todd apparently ran a Ponzi scheme, did a lot of lying, according to prosecutors. He took $250,000 from an investor to renovate a home. When the investor came by the house, they discovered it was a burnt-down shell with no work done on it. So
what?
Yeah. He also ran a Ponzi scheme on at least one person, taking their investment and using it to live lavishly. And to hide the theft, he created a false balance sheet and got loans using fraudulent information. This is all according to the DA's office. He spent big on a rented apartment in San Francisco, hotels, vacations, luxury cars. All that caught up with him, Kim. Crime doesn't pay.
He was living large.
Yeah. He was convicted of grand theft against 11 people. He's been sentenced to 4 years in jail in order to pay nearly $10 million in restitution.
Good day, sir.
Right. So, not a good end for the house flipper. And finally, busted in the NBA. Say it ain't so. Commish, did you see this? A gambling probe. Is it Jonte Porter? Is Commish still with us?
Yeah. I'm just pulling up the article. He's been all over Twitter for bets, and a lot of people are looping him in with the Shohei Ohtani jokes on Twitter.
I see.
Albert, thank you.
He is with the Raptors in Toronto. He was banned for life this week. Did you know that, Commish?
What?
You may want to adjust your programs. A league probe found that he disclosed confidential information to sports bettors and wagered on games, even betting on the Raptors to lose.
What?
Yes. He is now the second person to be banned by Commissioner Adam Silver for violating league rules. The other was LA Clippers owner Donald Sterling.
And I think it's just so tempting nowadays. You see it in all other sports. I saw in the NFL, there were a couple players that kind of got busted for gambling. Not on football, so they didn't get kicked out entirely. But you're going to see this a lot more often, I feel like.
I agree with the commission. I'll tell you, I think that it's a weird place that the NBA finds itself because you are carpet bombed with messaging about gambling, even within the arena where they are playing the basketball game. You can gamble in the arena. There are kiosks set up. There's any number of ways you can do it through your mobile phone. And so it's a weird spot with gambling so much now a part of sports. I mean, it just kind of the genie out of the bottle on this will definitely engulf players. And in this case, they have Porter, who, as I say, bet against his own team, placed an $80,000 bet that Porter would not hit the numbers set for him in parlays. This bet made through an online sports book. That bet would have won $1.1 million. Porter took himself out of that game after less than 3 minutes, claiming illness. None of his stats meeting the total set in that parlay. Now, that $80,000 bet was frozen and not paid out, but you can see how this investigation started.
It's super easy for the players to just fudge all what they're doing out there. They could fake, like he did the easy route, fake injuries. Well, he could have been easily out there trying actively not to score, trying not to grab rebounds.
That's right.
It would have been great to look back on to laugh at, but it's a huge conflict of interest, especially now that, like you said, DraftKings and all these other sports books are in the arenas that sports gambling are allowed in.
Jonte Porter out forever from the NBA, and that is Law and Disorder.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
Smash the like button like a boss,
Smash
if you would.
it
If
with
you're
your
just
iron
joining us,
rod.
we are a crowd-funded show, so appreciate all the super stickers, super chats, way that you show us a little love. It really does matter. Thank you for that. Tell me when we have David Katz ready, and I'm wondering also, Albert, where is the theme poll coming down?
Katz is in our green room. I will pull up our poll results right now.
We do have a poll going about David Katz's theme. I have wanted an intro of some kind for David Katz. We like production elements on this show. I think they just give the show a little pop. I've always liked them, in television and audio. And so we have 3 different offerings. And I'm wondering from Albert.
Yeah, it's R&B 1 is the one that's in the lead.
R&B 1 is in the lead. We had 3 options. Should we bring on David and ask him what maybe
Sure,
for his?
yeah.
I mean, he is the former federal prosecutor, now working the defense side of the table, and he just sets us straight on so much. He is Katzadamus. David Katz, his predictions have been otherworldly. David, I've felt that you need an intro of some kind. Now, you'll indulge me, and then we'll get to all the X's and O's of the law. But in evaluating the options, we put together these 3. One is kind of like a, Moody Blues, Donovan throwback kind of thing. Another is we just call it R&B 1, and the other is R&B 2. Here's the first one.
Now behold, Katzadamus, David Katz, the art of argument, his sharpest axe. Frameworks rise from his tongue, they spring. Interpreter of statutes, the legal king. Reason, praise.
Okay, so that's the first one, David Katz, all right? Here is R&B 1.
Welcome the man cat. Cats on the scene. He's breaking it down. Oh, cats lay out. He's breaking it down. Raise the bar with no doubt.
Known for the legal feature in his drag.
Oh, yeah.
Law in his hands, he's got the plan. Predictions sharp, they never miss.
So that's number 2, David Katz, okay? I mean, that's the second one, but it's called R&B 1, okay? And this is the last one. And we'll get your comments. We'll tell you where the vote is, and then we'll move on. This is R&B 2.
Greet the man cats. Cats on the scene. Known for the future jurisdiction sharp, they never miss. No way! He's breaking it down. Oh, Katz, lay it out. He's breaking it down. Raise the bar with no doubt.
Oh, I got to tell you, I just love. I love a couple of things there. Just for, he's bringing the law. Yes, he is. I just love. There are a couple of little beats in that last one that I really like. What do you like, David Katz?
Well, the first one, we're trying to keep our democracy. So being called a king, I don't know, but thank you very much. Number two has a nice, what they used to say on American Bandstand, it's nice and you can dance to it.
Yeah.
That's also true of number three.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with the people's choice, whatever the people decide.
And the people have chosen what, Albert? One? R&B one?
Yeah, R&B one. So what David Katz, the American Bandstand one.
Okay. Wow.
But I just can't have the year of the cat like with Pat Thurston, how that became verboten or legally problematic.
Honestly, I'll tell you two things about that. I'll just speak openly. I mean, it's if you want it, it's sort of, I feel bad for saying this, but the year of the cat, yes, would get us demonetized. The Al Stewart song would get us demonetized, but I feel like it's a little just. I mean, there are a bunch of cat songs we could get. I mean, I just feel like it's a little. I wanted something specific to you. You know what I mean? It's not Year of the Cats. That would be better. It's Year of the Cat. That's not your name. Your name is not David Cat. It's David Katz. So you see how I'm already having issues with it, even if I could use it. So I'm telling you, David, I've
why are you yelling?
I've worked to kind of get you something that's more tailored to you.
No,
and
I appreciate it. I want you to know how much I appreciate it. It's not my image of aggressive, zealous criminal defense counsel, but Pat Thurston used to love to go, "What's new, pussycat?" And my name is definitely not Pussycat or Pussycats, but
yes,
Mark,
yeah. you clearly,
Mark, it's your show and your audience, so you go.
No, and for those just joining us who don't know who Pat Thurston is, she's a brilliant talk show host. Sadly, her show off the air when KGO went off the air, and that's really that's when I swooped in and grabbed David Katz. So he's remembering his life with his real parents.
Well, she's still on KCBS from time to time in San Francisco. And over the weekend, we did a great show about the FISA reauthorization.
Oh, great. Yeah.
And it was Pat Thurston. It was so intelligent. It was both sides of the issue. We pointed out that Trump wanted to get rid of the provision of FISA, kill FISA, kill FISA. That had nothing to do with him. So it was actually very interesting that the far right and the left, the privacy advocates, almost made it required that they get a warrant. So like right now, if your name shows up, Mark, because you're corresponding with somebody who turns out to be a foreign terrorist, they don't have to go get a warrant on you. Or if my phone number shows up and I'm in a conversation with someone who they think is with the oligarchs, they don't have to get a warrant, even though we're American citizens. And so they voted 212 to 212 with the far right, the left, the privacy advocates with the 212. And then the speaker, actually, he's in a lot of trouble today. And he's in good trouble, right? As John Lewis used to say, he's in good trouble because he's trying to help Ukraine survive this Russian onslaught. But the speaker actually voted against having to have a warrant. But when it comes up for reauthorization in 2 years, it looks like there will be a warrant requirement before they can investigate a U.S. citizen, even if the U.S. citizen turns out to be in communication, which may be totally innocent, with someone that the intelligence community believes is a foreign agent or a foreign terrorist even. But they should have to get a warrant before they scoop up our stuff from this enormous database that they're collecting all the time. That was the Patriot Act and all of that. So we had a very intelligent discussion about that, Mark, and she only has 5.5 minutes to do it now. But if you catch her show, she's on from time to time, KCBS in the Bay Area.
Jesus, enough about Pat Thurston already. Albert, what is the story with Katz talking about Pat Thurston? It's like
Albert, thank you.
It's like a love letter to Pat Thurston. I love her too, but I'm starting to turn on her just based on the amount of my show that's taken up talking about her, Albert.
I might just clip that and send that to Pat, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
There's never been anything like this.
Okay, I get it. She's great. I miss her. I tell we'll get her on as a guest. I've asked her. We were in touch. She is lovely, and I think honestly, it makes me sad to. I don't want to say sad to hear her. I love hearing her always, but sad that she doesn't have more time on KCBS. So, David Katz, there's a lot to get to. Let's first of all talk about what's happening in this Trump trial with the jurors being plucked now out of the approval process and back, and essentially for different reasons now being discarded from this jury pool. There's a lot here, actually, isn't there, David?
Well, yes, there's an awful lot here. And it's always been daunting, the idea of trying to get a really unbiased, impartial jury. You know, the cynics always say that both sides want someone who's biased in their direction, who sees the world, through the perspective of their side of the case. Of course, the system wants to find as unbiased jurors as possible. And you want to try to ask those probing questions when you're one of the advocates that brings out for you or your jury consultants who you think are really going to be the good jurors for you, who get things from your point of view, who are going to be amenable to the defenses you put on, or if you're the prosecutor, to the prosecutive theory that you're putting on and that you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, since it's all out in the open, you hope that the answers and the vibes are ones that your opponent doesn't pick up and say, yeah, those are exactly the answers and the vibes that I don't want on the jury. So it's a very complicated process. There are people who hold themselves out as, jury consultants. I always thought I was very good at picking juries. I think I have, good people sense and a good sense of who I wanted on my jury. And I sound like one of those radio ads, but I have the results to prove it. I've won an awful lot of cases on both sides. I won all my cases when I was a prosecutor, as you should hopefully win all your cases when you're a prosecutor. And I've won a lot of cases, outright acquittals, and gotten cases dismissed as a criminal defense attorney. And that's hard to
that point, David, you're saying, and a big part of that is figuring out who the best people to hear these facts and objectively evaluate them might be.
There are so many anecdotes. I won the acquittal of an attorney. And people said, oh my God, how did you get that client? I said, well, when I was the law professor, he was one of my students. And they said, I hope you weren't his professor of legal ethics. And I said, I was, as a matter of fact, his professor of legal ethics. And in the fullness of time, he got indicted for income tax evasion, and I got him a total acquittal. And I can tell you a war story from that case. There was a banker who was a prospective juror, and he wanted him on the jury. He ended up acquitting along with everyone else. But I just thought, it's a reasonable doubt case. It's an emotional case. This guy who's so meticulous, he'll probably go through all the prosecution's evidence. He'll probably be the hardest juror to convince that there's reasonable doubt in the case. And I got proven right. And, I've had hung juries, which is that's a victory for the criminal defendant. That would be a huge victory for Donald Trump if he had a hung jury at the end of all of this. That's also, people have different theories of who's going to hang the jury. The idea is you don't want very willful, strong-minded people on the jury. One of the things that's surprising about this current jury, at least as it now stands today, there are 5 members who've been picked and who've been kept so far, 5 only. 2 of them are attorneys. And the theory was always for the prosecution, you didn't want attorneys because they might tell the others, well, I know the law better than the judge. This is really stuff that I get. And they would be unmovable. They were just the kind who might hang the jury. And from a prosecutor's point of view, you don't think very much, well, I'm bringing a case that's going to end up being 10-2 or 9-3 for the defense. You're worried that there's going to be the 1 or 2 who's going to hang it. From your perspective as the prosecutor, 1 or 2 who aren't going to get it. They're just going to hate your star witness because maybe your star witness is a fellow criminal along with the defendant who's on trial. So there's all those kind of factors.
This is just on that point. John Watson asks, ask Mr. Katz if it's true lawyers don't like engineers on the jury. You were just speaking about having lawyers on the jury. What about engineers?
Criminal defense attorneys stereotypically don't want people in the exact sciences and don't want engineers. The idea is that they see the case very cut and dry. Now we're talking about the most stereotypical, hackneyed view of the jury, which is that the prosecutor is going to be arguing the evidence and, add it all up, 2 + 2 or 4, the defendant's guilty. and at least in the stereotype, that the defense attorney is hoping for sympathy, hoping for, other people didn't get treated the same as this defendant. He's had a really tough life. I just like him. He's handsome or good looking. Whatever it is that the defense hopes is going to be the hook, which is not a, very straightforward view of the evidence only. That's the stereotype, at least. And so with the same stereotypes, you can go right down the list. I don't know, some of your viewers may not like it, but this was the old stereotypical list that goes back to, when I started doing this in the 80s as a prosecutor. And the list was that, you wanted, if you were the defense attorney, you wanted social workers, people with a big heart. You wanted women, generally speaking. Things could change about the case. You wanted people who were in the not exact sciences or in fields that were kind of a little, a touchy-feely, and that the prosecutor wanted the engineers. They wanted the men. In those stereotypical days, the prosecutor wanted Asian Americans, and the criminal defense attorney wanted Hispanic and African American jurors.
So that's the overview. Now, what looked to be a pretty quick impaneling of a jury. I mean, this looked to be something, you had 7 jurors as of Tuesday, and now we lose 2. Handicap a little bit for us how you see things proceeding. And the judge originally had mentioned that he wanted to, and indicated to both sides, they want to get things started on Monday. But they were click-clacking, but now they may be clicking, but not clacking.
They brought in 100 people. We call them prospective jurors or veneer persons. A veneer from the French, that they would come in and be called. Normally, if you say, well, I don't really feel that comfortable about this case, the judge wants to keep you around. But this is such an extraordinary case, such high profile, that if the prospective juror said, I feel so biased, I don't want to be on this jury, that's called a hardship. Again, they're usually reluctant to let people get off for hardships unless they're real hardships and they're documented and probed. This judge just said, if you have a hardship, if you have a bias, you can get off the jury. So that they lost like 55 of the 100 people right off the bat. From the 45, yes, they got 5. So now they're going to bring in like another 100. And if history repeats itself, they'll go through that panel and get about 5, and they may have to bring in yet a third panel. So I see the chances of it actually starting with opening statements. I see that as very unlikely to happen by Monday. And I want to say one more thing about the case, because I think I have a sort of a fair-minded, objective view of it. And I think that this judge is making a big mistake by not excusing Trump. I think any day that Trump wants to be excused, he should be allowed to be excused. I think part of it is that Trump is, playing poker with the judge, and right now I think he's winning. I think if the judge said to him, you can be excused any day that you want to be excused, I think he would turn around and say, oops, the judge called my bluff. I don't really want to be excused. He wants to confront Michael Cohen. He wants to confront Stormy Daniels if she testifies. He wants to be there when Hope Hicks testifies, when that guy Pecker from the National Enquirer. He wants to be there for so many of the witnesses. Watch this. If his son's high school graduation, which is so important to him, if he's allowed to go to it and Michael Cohen is on the stand that day, you watch and see which one Trump picks. But right now, Trump has the best of all worlds. He could say, this judge is pinning me down. Can you imagine? Texas might indict Biden tomorrow for some malarkey over the border. And some Texas judge says, well, under Texas law, Biden has to be here in my courtroom every single day. This is a criminal case. He can't be out campaigning. The world would lose its mind. And people should lose their mind a little bit that the judge is enforcing this rule. It may be a rule, but rules can be waived. Rules can be excused. He should let Trump go anywhere that Trump wants to go, any day that Trump wants to go there, and then Trump can make up his mind whether he wants to be in court or not. I think it's a huge mistake. I think Trump is not going to try to seek an order, because I think if Trump really wanted to fight it, and he really did fight it, the state court of appeal might rule in his favor that under these extraordinary circumstances where he's the presumptive nominee of one of our 2 major parties, he can't be pinned down in this way. This is starting to look like election interference, and not to me. I mean, I'm on the side of the prosecution in this case, but I think that's how it's playing. And the high school graduation, the judge should rule he can go to that. And if he wants to argue the case of his that's pending in the U.S. Supreme Court, I mean, it looks so arrogant That's not a normal request. I have a case pending in the U.S. Supreme Court. I'd like to be there when this case that involves my presidential immunity is argued in the U.S. Supreme Court. Oh, well, you just want to be in another court. You're not required to be there. I think the judge is getting so played on this one.
That's really interesting. It's funny because I was mentioning yesterday that Trump is miserable right now because he is used to being able to have his way. He's used to being able to chirp up whenever he wants. He's being able, in most situations, to control the narrative. He is able to control the narrative outside the court, both before and after. But in that courtroom, he's forced to sit there and be quiet. He's even been reprimanded through lawyers about, speaking too loudly that might with anything that might influence jurors. So I see him as in a miserable place. Now, you've just made, I think, a compelling argument for the fact that he is looking forward to confronting those who will be on the stand, those that you mentioned. But I'm wondering if there isn't an aspect of this which is, party's over, Donald Trump. You're going to sit here every day as long as this case is going on. And there's a punitive aspect to this, even as you make a great point about the fact that, well, he can claim that this is just that, a way to punish him, when it's actually not grounded in any sort of legitimacy.
And he's presumed not guilty. I mean, that's the great bulwark of our system. He's presumed not guilty. And I know that people really like the fact that he's, pinned down there. But he's gotten very good at getting himself unpinned down because they have that microphone for him outside the courtroom. No one seems to have turned that off. Maybe they think that's a violation of the First Amendment or something like that. But he goes right out there. He holds these press conferences. He dominates the news. Trump's, we've always thought that to run for president, you have to get a lot of good news. But Trump thinks a lot of news is good enough, that somehow a lot of news, a lot of publicity is good news for him. It shows that he's dominant. It shows that he's a player. You don't see Biden in the headlines on Monday, although Biden is the sitting president of the United States making major policy decisions. What do you see? And you may say, well, the thing is so tawdry, this is going to turn off the suburban housewives. Yes and no. It depends how things play. Not being allowed to go to my son's high school graduation. It's breaking my heart. That's going to hurt him with the suburban housewives. I know what the case is about. It's about a 15-year-old, sexual peccadillo and paying off. I get it. It's falsifying records. It's a potential felony. But I think it can be cast as being a long time ago. And I think that the prosecution and the judge have to be very careful that they don't play into his hands, because I think so far, not as bad as they did in Atlanta playing into his hands, but they have to be thinking through that aspect of it. And I think it's very easy for the judges to say, I'm the judge. This is my courtroom. I'm used to giving orders. I'm going to be just like I always am, give orders and make people obey them. And he should look at the fact that, this is a whole different dynamic. You've just got to think outside the box if you're a judge or a prosecutor in this case.
I wonder, David, if it's notwithstanding what you just said, I mean, innocent until proven guilty, et cetera. Yeah, innocent until proven guilty. In other words, that's what the presumption is for everyone who is facing trial. Yet you're saying, but for this guy facing trial, we're not going to make him sit there the way you would everyone else who gets that presumption that Trump is getting. You're making an exception in his case. So the law already then is making an exception. It sounds to me like you're saying, yeah, and that's kind of what the law has to do and deal with some individual circumstance from time to time.
If a county near Eagle Pass charged Biden and Mayorkas tomorrow, with illegally transporting aliens into the United States by their willful indifference to it, and said, well, under Texas law, you have to sit here for your misdemeanor wobbler felony trial on those charges. And then Biden were required to sit there with Mayorkas day after day, because even though they're presumed innocent, that's the rule in Texas, and they got charged down in Texas, and they need to be in that courtroom. I mean, they just need to be there. And the trial's going to last, August and September. I don't know. I mean, what would you think of that? I know you're supposed to have the other way around, but
that's why you're a great attorney. Now, I mean, no, because it's a legitimate question. It's not like you're just creating an argument. It's a legit argument. All right, so that's the situation in New York. Before I completely leave the situation in New York, because I have a lot going on at the Supreme Court, and I want to get to that. I know your time limited. I do want to, if you can just underscore something that's really important. The felony part of this is not the payoff. It's not even the the falsifying records would be a misdemeanor, right? It's the falsifying records in service of covering up something that would be open to the general public then to make a decision in the general election on, right? I mean, that is to say for political reasons. Can you just take us, that linkage is super important, right?
This is a complicated part of it, and we've been talking about this really since the charges were first brought. So if he falsifies business records, and he knows that beyond a reasonable doubt, he knows he's putting down their legal expenses of $130,000, plus he's adding enough to pay tax on $130,000. And he knows that Michael Cohen has not performed $130,000 worth of legal services, you know, with the hourly billing, $500 an hour. He worked for 260 hours. There's nothing like that. So he knows this is a fraud. It's still a misdemeanor unless it's in furtherance of some other crime, some felony crime. And one of the things that's remarkable about the case, because normally as a criminal defense attorney, I would have brought a motion for what we call a bill of particulars. I would say, you have to give me fair notice of what I have to defend at trial. You have to explain to me what it is that this other felony is. So far, the prosecutor has been able to not say clearly and not been required by the court to say clearly what this other felony is that would, notice the crime that this falsification of records is in furtherance of that makes what Trump is charged with a felony. What is that other crime? So people have speculated that that's one of two other crimes, that he knew he was committing a federal campaign violation because it's a violation of federal campaign laws to not properly state what you're spending money on. And if you say, I spent $130,000 on Michael Cohen's legal services in the run up to the election, and what you spent $130,000 off on was a payoff so someone would hush up, that is a campaign violation. That could be the crime in furtherance of, which makes this a felony. But people say, well, wait a second, you're violating state law because you were going to make some federal felony. Wait, it should be state. So the people who say it should be state, which is the safer position for the appeal, as they win the case, Trump is convicted, it goes up on appeal, and they're arguing this on appeal. People think the better argument on appeal to sustain the conviction is that it's in furtherance of another state crime, which means that they're going to try to show, if they're smart, that Trump knew he was violating state campaign finance laws, that there's a law in New York State which says the same thing, that when you run for an office, and he is running for an office in New York because you have to win in New York to win the presidency. And so he knows that state campaign financing laws are being broken because they require the same truthful disclosures. And if they don't prove one of those two beyond a reasonable doubt, or they prove only the federal one, and the appeals court said, nah, not good enough, then he ends up with only a misdemeanor, which will leave Trump with the argument, will it matter? We will have had the election by the time there's any appeal in this case, right? But it'll leave Trump with the argument if he's either only convicted of a misdemeanor, or he'll have the argument whether whatever happens, he'll say, you know, they went to all this money, they went to all this expense, they made a mountain out of a molehill, this is a big traffic ticket. I don't see it that way. I think it's very important that people tell the truth on their campaign finance forms. You know, that was John Edwards' undoing, that he had mischaracterized that money that he got when he was running. What was he running as then? I guess he was running for president. He was running for president,
exactly.
Yeah, and then he got prosecuted for that in federal court. And he ended up having a hung jury, and then the Department of Justice dropped the case. What's really interesting is that that same kind of federal case could have been brought by the U.S. attorneys and by the Department of Justice. And there's been a lot of commentary about how it was slowed down. And there's no doubt about that. This is one of Bill Barr's ugly, ugly moments, how he slowed that case down when he was the attorney general for Trump, right? And remember, Trump was co-conspirator number one along with Michael Cohen, and then they changed the accusation around. There was a huge amount of political pressure. They de-emphasized that Trump was co-conspirator number one. They just said someone on the Trump team was co-conspirator number one. And one of the reasons that Michael Cohen is so furious is that he alone took the fall for this conspiracy that it sure looked like Donald Trump was part of and led and told Michael Cohen what to do. But when they report that huge delay under Barr, they do need to also report, Mark, in the interest of fairness, that the statute of limitations had not run when Merrick Garland became the attorney general. And when he appointed, right, and the president appointed a U.S. attorney for the Southern District of New York. And they, not Barr and Trump, decided not to go on this as a federal case. So that's part of the whole narrative, right? That Trump says that, hey, you know, the feds didn't go on this. They went on Edwards and they didn't go on me. You see that even the feds knew it wasn't a federal crime, And that's why this DA is just making a big political hoop-de-doo after he ran on getting me. That's his narrative, right? I don't agree with that, but that's his story.
I feel as though that he'll spin no matter what. I mean, no matter what outcome, at whatever point, he'll always spin. Now let me just turn to the Supreme Court. There's so much going on there, and the J6 thing is, I suppose, a front and center argument and issue. And in early arguments, oral arguments, that's what we get a chance to hear. It seems as though the court, or you can tell me, it seems almost inclined to view these January 6th insurrectionists in a different way than the Justice Department has been viewing them.
Well, it's important to understand the statistics. Okay, so there's about 1,000 marauders, rioters at the Capitol. About 300 of them have been charged with this obstruction statute violation. 300. So to 700 of them, it doesn't matter. As to Trump, Trump is charged with 4 things. Only 2 of these, if the worst decision from the point of view of the Department of Justice comes down from the U.S. Supreme Court, it would at most affect 2 of the charges against Trump. So when he loses the presidential immunity argument that's going to be heard later this month, which I believe he will lose, and when he goes to trial after that in the federal court in the District of Columbia, he'll still have at least 2 federal felony charges against him for what he did in January 6 riots. So this does not get Trump off the hook. And it might be that even these 2 of the 4 charges would still survive because Trump did a whole lot more in the January 6th, right? In terms of not tamping it down, in terms of the incendiary comments he made leading up to it. His particular motive may have actually been to destroy documents. He wanted to destroy those documents that came in from the states that showed that he'd lost. He wanted to reroute them or send them back to the states. But the problem with the obstruction charge, and there's about 100 people that this affects, and some of them, Mark, are charged with other things too. So there are under 100 people.
But to be fair, David, they're under 100 people, but the penalties associated with this are substantial.
I think most of them are charged with federal felonies, Mark, where they would still face substantial penalties. You take Fisher, who's actually the appellant in the U.S. Supreme Court. Fisher himself, the former police officer, he's charged with 6 other crimes. In fact, Kavanaugh asked that question, which he said, well, why do we need the 7th one so much? I mean, it's such a huge argument. Why even, why go down this road? And of course, the Department of Justice said, what do you mean? We go down this road because there's 7 good charges. We don't say, oh, well, one of them involves a legal issue. I mean, if it involves a losing legal issue, but if the government thinks it's a winning legal issue, they charge the 7th one. They don't just say, well, we're going to drop it because Kavanaugh may say you've got 6 other ones. So, they went back and forth on that. But this statute is a bit troubling because it was passed after Enron. It was passed because there was a loophole at the time that if you saw the feds were coming into your office or you heard from someone, their feds are coming in tomorrow, and you destroyed the records yourself. You just threw a bunch of files in the garbage and burned them. You threw them in the fireplace and burned them. Or, you pushed delete, and you somehow actually managed to delete them, or you attempted to delete them. You were not guilty of a crime under that post-Enron period of time. So they passed this statute that said, if you destroy records or you otherwise obstruct justice. So it looks like they're going to say otherwise obstruct justice means you had to do something regarding records. So somebody who really went into the Capitol to try to destroy records, like to destroy the certifications of the vote or something like that. But someone who just went in there to maraud, obstruct justice with criminal intent, because that's what the government says. They said, well, we couldn't just convict everybody of this because you have to show corrupt intent and we have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And they got questions, especially from people like Gorsuch and I think Alito, which said, wait a second, we're in the middle of our argument right now. Somebody jumped up in the middle of our argument here in the Supreme Court and screamed their head off and made a huge disturbance, and we couldn't actually decide the case today. It was such an uproar, we had to come back tomorrow. Could they be prosecuted for the same felony? Hadn't they just obstructed an official proceeding in the same way those people who marauded at the Capitol? And then the Department of Justice said, no, that what happened at the Capitol was completely different. It had to do with the peaceful transfer of power. There was nothing else like it. The reason that we're not going to charge this in the future because someone disrupts a Supreme Court argument or because somebody disrupted a council meeting is because it was sui generis. It was all different from everything else, what happened on January 6th. And, but I think if you want to do a Katsadamas, I think they're going to say that it's too vague. They could charge anybody. Any obstruction is just too vague to hit someone with a felony and face, what is it, a 20-year penalty because you obstructed something. And of course, the super right-wingers like Thomas said, well, weren't there a lot of other demonstrations? They want to go back to Portland. They want to go back to some of the excessive demonstrations, if you want to call that, after the George Floyd killing, right? And make the point that, well, how come you never charge this? And of course, the rebuttal mark is always the same, that this was one of a kind. You had 900 people, and they got into the Capitol, right or wrong. They got into the Capitol. They did something which is, not going to happen even at the U.S. Supreme Court. So I think that they will knock down that statute. I think it may yet still apply to Trump. And no matter what, it doesn't spare Trump. Trump will face felony charges in federal court over what he did leading up to January 6th and what he did during January 6th, not tamping it down and sending an incendiary message about Mike Pence right in the middle of the riot when we all saw how dangerous the situation was on worldwide TV.
So well said. That seems like that is, oh, did I lose? Okay, there we go. No, there is a Katsadamas with the prediction that SCOTUS will essentially let the obstruction skate, but that it won't affect future cases against Donald Trump. This from Maud. This is a $25 bond. Can't cover you, but I can, dear. Let me ask you about the bond. This is a little, then I'll jump back to the Supreme Court. Just Maud, and big shout out to Maud, always
big
supporter of ours. What about this bond company? There are increasing questions as to the story with this bond, David Katz. And several people have mentioned it in the chat.
Well, Maud has $25 of real money, apparently. And this bonding company out of California that's not even licensed in New York, where they're posting the bond, may have really no money. There's supposed to be a Schwab account that has $175 million in it. But I guess the concerns, the many concerns, the great concerns, are that it doesn't seem to be in the bonding company's name. It seems like it's still in Trump's name. And on top of that, is it pledged solely for this purpose? Or is it pledged so where basically the courts in New York have like a third or fourth on it? So someone has a prior claim on it, right? And so it's like, oops, 6 months into the appeal, someone made their principal claim on it, their primary claim on it, and the money's gone. You had asked me when this first came up, is there $175 million sitting in a bank that's secure and can't be touched or moved? And the answer seems to be no. So given that, I think the courts will reject that bond, maybe reject any bond from that bonding company, and go tell Trump to go get a better bond. And if he doesn't within, let's say, 10 or 12 days, go get the better bond, and it can actually be vetted and clears and looks like a real bond that'll be there to guarantee the payment of the judgment when Trump loses the appeal. Then they can do all of the things to execute on the judgment that they could have. Whatever they could have done, taking the rents, going into Trump Tower, going into other properties, they'll be free to do that because we presume the regularity and legitimacy of judgments. And you can't just delay on appeal and keep your creditor hanging on. You've got to have a bond to either cover the creditor, or the creditor can start taking creditor's remedies, which can be going into your properties and seizing your rents and doing stuff like that. And I expect Letitia James, the Attorney General, will do that if a proper bond isn't posted promptly.
This from teacher Lori G, who asks, please ask about SCOTUS hearing on applying obstruction to January 6th insurrectionists. We did that. And Trump regarding the case about giving the prosecutors too much power in the current case regarding cop suit against BLM leader. That's another case, I believe, in which they rejected an appeal on the part of this Black Lives Matter activist. And they skipped completely deciding whether the leader can be sued for an injury to a police officer. Apparently, this was a protest in Baton Rouge in July of 2016 following the police killing of George Floyd. And this guy who faces a lawsuit from an officer who was hit in the head by a rock during this demonstration, or a piece of concrete, they're not sure. But anyway, the protest, actually, I think the protest was sparked by the death of Alton Sterling, which happened outside a convenience store. But anyway, more to the point, the ACLU is involved and saying that the actions are protected by the Constitution's First Amendment, which guarantees free speech and the right to assemble, etc. And no justices dissented from the court's decision not to hear the case. But Sonia Sotomayor wrote a statement saying why the court did not need to intervene. She mentioned a recent Supreme Court ruling raising some of the same issues that could benefit this guy as litigation continues. The activist is DeRay McKesson. So I don't know if you want to comment on this. I guess she wanted to ask you about that, David. I mean, any thoughts?
Can we hold that thought to next week and have a chance to take a look at it and see what the issues are? Because it doesn't jump right into my mind what prior decision Justice Sotomayor is referring to. So
right. It's a little bit on the, but yeah, let's do that. I want to ask you about something that isn't related to SCOTUS. Well, somebody asked about Clarence Thomas. I mean, it seems obvious that this guy should have recused himself. He clearly has not from this J6 case. I mean, it's yet another reprehensible chapter in Clarence Thomas's career.
Well, it is reprehensible. He should have just recused himself from this case because it does involve the January 6th, riots. It involves these insurrections, and his own wife sent and reposted. I think she wrote some, from scratch, and she reposted some that were very incendiary in the same way that what these rioters did. I think she said something about, she reposted one that said, like, shouldn't Biden be in Guantanamo? And, from all the appearances of this, all of the very far right-wing groups that she was involved with and so forth, her husband should have recused himself. Of course, he should have recused himself for many other cases, too. And it just brings the Supreme Court into disrepute. I mean, it really does already. They say now that they want to buy him off the Supreme Court. They're going to give him like two of those fancy, not just one, but two of those fancy RVs that he drives.
I come from regular stock.
Yeah, they're gonna give him all those trips to somewhere that he went. That he blew $500,000 on the trip. They're gonna give him enough money to get him off the court. And just that people say, "Oh, is that really true? Did that happen? Are there documents that back that up?" He so brought the U.S. Supreme Court into disrepute. And all the judges in America have to live by rules, except the 9 on the U.S. Supreme Court. And the problem there is, of course, who would impose those rules and who would enforce those rules with a separation of power. And if somehow the judiciary did it, that would make the judges on that judiciary committee superior to the U.S. Supreme Court, right? Those judges could tell the Supreme Court justices what to do. It just seems to me that there's some solution to this, like a code of ethics that, more than 5 of the 9, right? A majority of the Supreme Court would impose these rules of ethics, and they would impose them on themselves. There's no problem then with the separation of powers. There's no problem with having a bunch of judges act in a way that's superior to the justices on the Supreme Court. The justices on the Supreme Court would do those things to themselves, which is exactly how it should be. They should have restraint. They should have the rule of law. They should impose those rules on themselves, and they should make sure that they get enforced, because whoever the enforcer would work for the U.S. Supreme Court. So there'd be no problem with the separation of powers. They just don't have the will to do it. We need checks and balances, and it's hard to put a check and balance on yourself, right? But that's the theory of our limited powers. People who are willing to submit to rules and have a rule-based system that applies to everybody, including U.S. Supreme Court justices. But the easy way would be is if they, the 9, would impose it on themselves.
Kim, did you have something?
Yeah, a story just came down today where Trump and his team are requesting a delay in the federal classified documents case or espionage case, saying that he and his lawyers really are only able to concentrate on the case going on in New York right now. And so I wonder, do these judges, is it reasonable? Do they have to act in a way that helps Trump and his lawyers juggle all these multiple cases in various states? Or is it, hey, your responsibility in this court is to this court. Well, I don't care what's going on anywhere else.
Generally, you have the right to your counsel of choice. But to say to the courts, my counsel of choice on this case is also my counsel of choice on my other case, which is also my counsel of choice on my third case, which means that my counsel of choice can't get ready by the deadlines that you set, is a loser. It's a little interesting, but it's a loser. The reality is that with Trump's money and his power, he can hire 4 different sets of great lawyers and have one set concentrate only on one of those cases. And again, for someone of limited means or middle-class person, that would be a totally different kettle of fish. But for someone like Trump, no, that your lawyer, that you chose the same lawyers for 2 cases, and so they ended up working on one and not the other, that's a loser. I think any judge would reject that. I think even Cannon would have to reject that. If Cannon gives them a continuance because they were too busy dealing with New York or dealing with the E. Jean Carroll case, civil case or something like that, they will finally get rid of her. That would be the ruling that undoes her in the 11th Circuit and gets her replaced with a different district judge. So, but at this point, they just file motions. They file motions. Some of it's for the base. Some of it is because you are entitled to file motions. I mean, he's the king of vexatious litigation. He really is. A lot of this is vexatious and frivolous. At the same time, as a criminal defense attorney, that's what judges do. They go through 10 arguments that may not be great because there's the one pearl, right? And we want that pearl to be heard in the interest of, better to have 10, guilty people go free than one innocent person go to jail. I don't think for a minute that Trump is innocent of any of those 4, but that's our rule of law. That's kind of the greatness of our system, that we do care about proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and every good motion should be heard and ruled on, and you have to go through a lot of chaff. And a lot of these just seem like chaff and not wheat in all
our last minute or two with David Katz. I just wanted to pass along questions that are coming in. Phineas asks, Mark, ask Katz if Palestinian protesters blocking traffic is a terrorist act. Well, they're not Palestinian. Oh, I guess they're protesting for the Palestinian causes. And Mama to 3 Boys says that's a great question. I was wondering the same thing. So is this blocking traffic, in this case it's Palestinian, but it could be anything. It could be PETA, it could be whatever. Is that a terrorist act?
I don't think that makes sense in these cases. You have to go through the particular facts of the case, but just the general act of blocking traffic. I know it's maddening, especially in LA. We have this thing which you can be for this, you can be against it, you can protest anything you want to. Don't block the traffic while you're doing it. So I certainly get that point of view. Yeah. Whatever your point of view is, however you want to express it, have your bullhorn, that's bad enough. Don't block the traffic, especially, we're so traffic. It's not like you could have much alternate. In the Bay Area, you kind of have alternate transportation.
Well, I don't know. You shut down the Golden Gate Bridge, which is what they did. I mean, that's really rough. And they shut down, I think prior to that, a couple of bridges as well. And in New York, they did the same thing.
Mark, one thing, let's bear in mind that some of the people who are getting on that bridge, they're going to surgery. They're going to some emergency procedure.
I made that point.
I mean, they're going to a job that they busted their ass to get, and they're going to lose that job because they got to work late. So let's not make light of the fact that they do exact a real. I'm not trying to make a pun. They exact a real toll on people's lives to have the traffic suddenly blocked. There are other ways to protest. There really are, and that is a very selfish way to do it. Let's be honest. That doesn't make it a terrorist act, though.
Right.
As a matter of fact, we have a listener who was on her way to her very first oncology appointment, going to find out what the next step is to treat this thing she'd just been diagnosed with. A lot of people affected by this, and I wanted to mention that yesterday the CHP put out an alert in the Bay Area that anybody that was affected by the traffic stoppage on the Golden Gate Bridge due to that protest should call and give a statement to them. They may be able or eligible to get some type of victims' compensation money, and they're looking for information.
I don't mean that's such a great thank you, Kim, because that brings up another point that's just very legal, which is, can't I, on my way to my first oncology appointment or whatever it might be, my job, etc., can't I sue those who were detained for blocking the traffic, for the damages on my end?
They probably don't have much money.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reality, isn't it? Yeah.
There's that. I'm sorry, always bring it down to that level, but I'm a working lawyer. It's great to be with you, Mark, and great to be with Kim. So, play whatever theme your audience likes for me.
Listen, I mean,
welcome to Man Cat. Katz on the scene. He's breaking it down.
Where's my Katsadamus? Where's my Katsadamus?
Known for the legal feature in his drag.
Oh, yeah!
Law in his hands, he's got the plan.
I'm loving it. There's Katsadamus.
Never miss.
Yeah. Oh, it's so good. David, thank you for being here. Love that you're here. And we look forward to next week. All the best,
See you
my
next
friend.
Thursday.
All right, I'll look forward to it. Thank you. David Katz, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow. Spirited around with David Katz. We got to a lot of stuff. Thank you for all the questions. Man. And it seems as though we've settled on R&B 1. Is that what it was, Albert? On David Katz's
R&B 1 in
theme.
the vote in the chat. So, and it's good.
Although there seems to be, I mean, whenever, as you suggested, and Albert does have a piercing way to see it all. He doesn't speak much on the show, but when he speaks, oftentimes he sees the brutal reality of things. And when you throw it open to the audience, which I have a tendency to do, I always want everybody's opinion on things. Albert's general view is that's when they crap on things, when you open it up to them. What you ought to do is just say, this, just do it. The other thing Albert, as you know, is famous for is when somebody doesn't like a drop. Albert says, well, guess what? We're going to play the crap out of that drop.
There's never been anything like this. There's never been anything like this.
When Jefferson Graham said he didn't like the never been anything like this, we played the crap out of that.
There's never been anything like this.
So that's Albert's little superpower, you know. I'm very much, oh my God, they don't like it. We should change this. We should change that. I'm very responsive, you know, curious about what the answer might be on the audience's part. Albert's like, let's make a decision. We're going to go with that. So
I think that's my favorite thing about Albert.
He's
good day, sir.
Exactly. It's done. Right. People want a Bee Gees sound. I can't get a Bee Gees sound. But
we could just do the rest of the show in falsetto, baby.
Yeah, exactly. Somebody wants to, you know, where are you guys with all of your talents? Yoga for Life. I see where you are. $5 super sticker.
Big shout out.
Big shout out. Thank you, Yoga for Life. You know, we're crowd-funded, so we make a big deal out of the part of the crowd that funds us. Wes, thank you for the $5 super sticker.
Big shout
Wes.
out.
For support of the show. Wes is a great supporter. So, Albert, Gregory Deckelman says with a $10 super chat.
Big shout out.
So, what you're saying, Mark, is you never bluff on the river. Quite the tell, sir. Good to know. Mm-hmm. When did I say that?
I think when you were talking about your 3 housekeepers.
Oh. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's an interesting conclusion you made. I wish I never bluffed on the river. I bluffed off a fortune just 2 weeks ago. So, on the river. I mean, that's where your biggest bluff can be most effective.
I don't know what that means to bluff on the river.
It means that you're representing you have a big hand when you don't.
Okay.
And so you put a lot of money in as a big bet, and that puts pressure on the other player to have to call a big bet. So you're representing, or repping, as we say, a big hand. It's a very, but it's tricky, because if the other person has a big hand, you're screwed. And that's exactly what happened to me a couple of weeks ago.
That's part of no limit. The no limit to that is like, do I have something?
Yeah.
I might have something.
The other thing, thank you, Gregory, though. That's interesting that you got that from whatever I said. The part of poker that I like is that you have to figure out what other people have before you make that decision. It's not always about what you're going to do. It's about what you're going to do in relation to what the situation is, what other people have. And since you can't see their cards, you have to figure it out on your own. So you utilize skills that you've developed, like maybe it's pattern recognition on betting or whatever it may be. But the point is, I remember when I bluffed a couple of weeks ago, because it was a big bluff, that I had specifically in my head, clearly, I knew what this other player had, who I was in the hand with. So I knew that if I pushed a lot of chips in, that he'd have to fold. Only I was wrong. He had a made straight, and he called me, and that was the end
Busted.
of.
Yeah. That's another fun part. You get to play with the people for a couple hours. You kind of see the patterns of how they do things, and you think you solve them. I've solved that guy over there, but you don't.
Right, and then all of a sudden, thanks for having me, friends. I enjoy all. Please always support healthcare workers. Sometimes their lives are threatened daily. This is from Audrey W., who gives us a $50 super chat.
Big shout out.
Wow.
Really nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
so
much. Thanks for having me, friends. I enjoy all. Please always support healthcare workers. Sometimes their lives are threatened daily with guns or other, and pure willful ignorance of science and the unfortunate inability to self-fact find. Support us. Yeah, I mean, I agree. Well, I think healthcare workers are, they were viewed with a kind of heroism that's reserved for those who, are involved in moments of valor on the battlefield, right? Because we viewed them as those who responded to a clear need on the part of the nation. And what they did required great valor. And what they do continues to require great valor. So Audrey W., thank you for that. And I think it's a good sentiment. I think everyone on this show would agree with that. And if they wouldn't agree with it, I'd get rid of them on this show. How is that?
I thought it was hard for you to fire people.
Well, now that Audrey has talked to me, it's getting easier. Yeah. Nurses are the angels of the medical field, says Phineas J. Whoopi. Exactly.
I'll take that as a compliment, being Filipino. So thank you.
Yes, the Filipino. Is there anything stronger? Filipino nurses are everywhere. I love it. Albert, I feel as though I have to wrap up. Am I right about that?
We are at the end. It is 1:03. Although we're not even married to the clock. This show could just go on forever if we really chose to. So.
Yes, it could, Albert, and literally someday it will. But I don't know if that day is today. We did a lot, and let me just review for you what we've done. We did a chunk of Trump. We talked about what he did on his off day. I feel like this should be the end of the show music that can play under me.
I think this is a new fundraising opportunity. It's the Mark Thompson Show Talkathon, where the talking just continues, ad nauseum.
We stop talking when we hit our goal.
That's right. Perfect. I mean, who knows how long it could go on?
We have a price tag.
We'll be here at midnight. He's still yapping.
We did a chunk of Trump. We did a great law and disorder involving that Oklahoma GOP person and even that condo auction in San Jose. There's been a lot today. We talked about that busted NBA player who was busted and removed from the league for gambling. We have done a lot. Of course, David Katz was all-star. And we even voted on his theme, and we feel so-so about the decisions made. Tomorrow's our Big Friday show, Florida, Michael Shore on politics and more. Looking forward to that one. It's going to be
Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Kim's got the After Party Live over there on the After Party Live channel. Until tomorrow, everyone, thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you.